Welcome. Let your shoulders drop. Let the quiet settle in around you like the soft, dry sand of the desert at dusk. You are about to drift into a world long gone, yet not forgotten. A place where life hummed to the rhythm of the Nile. A place where stone and ritual shaped the everyday, and sleep like death was a sacred passage. Tonight, we journey to ancient Egypt, but not the pharaohs you see in textbooks, not just the golden masks and soaring pyramids. Tonight, we explore the heartbeat beneath the monument, the people who toiled in the sun, prayed in the shadows, and walked narrow paths between river and desert. This is not a story of glory. This is the rhythm of survival. In a world of dry winds, sacred dust, and the quiet burden of belief. Let's begin where the sun rises hot and early, where your feet crunch on crushed limestone, where you, yes you, are a tomb builder. Close your eyes. It's the 5th dynasty. The land is still young. You're standing barefoot on sun-blasted ground, squinting toward a limestone ridge. The air tastes of grit. Your body aches from yesterday's haul. You are one of hundreds, just a number etched into the schedule of a sacred duty. You build tombs, for kings, for queens, for gods made flesh. But no one will remember your name. The morning march before the sky even glows orange, you're awake, not because you're rested, but because sleep is light when your bed is made of woven reeds and your dreams are filled with dust. A horn echoes across the village, low, haunting. You roll off your mat, feet sinking into packed earth, and join the shuffle of others like you. Silent men, eyes half closed, muscles already tight with anticipation. You carry your copper chisel, not because it's sharp, but because it's yours. Your hands know it like they know your own skin. You walk, past the rows of whitewashed huts, past the murmuring priests, toward the tomb in progress, still just a carved wound in the rock. The sun hasn't yet crested the hills, but it will. And when it does, it will sear. Labor in the shadows of gods. You swing the chisel against hard stone again and again. There is no hurry, yet every delay is punished, silently. There is no cruelty here, just a constant pressure to meet divine expectation. Every stroke echoes back like a drumbeat. Time stretches, collapses, and reforms. Sweat runs along your spine. Your linen kilt clings, stiff with salt. Dust gathers in your nose, behind your eyes, in the corners of your mouth. You do not complain. There is no point. The overseer watches from a shaded rock. He carries a stick, but rarely uses it. He doesn't need to. You've seen what happens to men who break rhythm. They disappear, not punished, just reassigned, silently. Sometimes a priest blesses the sight. The air stills. You stop mid-swing, hands trembling. You bow, as do the others. You don't speak. Words would desecrate the space. You return to work. Midday. If you're lucky. There is no lunch break, only pauses. If the gods are kind, a boy brings bread and beer in a clay jar. The bread is rough, often burned. The beer is thick, more porridge than drink. But it calms the ache in your gut and the dizziness behind your eyes. You find a rock to sit on. You stare across the sands toward the shimmer of the Nile. So far, so calm. You imagine being on a boat, fishing. But you weren't born into fishing. You were born into dust. The break ends, not with a bell, but with the shadow moving. You follow it back to the stone. The evening descent. As the sun finally slumps behind the ridge, the foreman lifts his hand. You don't cheer, you simply stop. Fingers cracked, arms trembling, feet coated in pale dust. You return to your hut, skin raw from the day. Your wife, if you have one, waits with more bread, maybe lentils, maybe nothing. You say little. Words are a luxury. You lie down, eyes open, staring at a reed roof. Tomorrow you'll do it again. Not for wages, not for glory, but because this is the way. This is the rhythm of the tomb builder. Hidden, holy, forgotten. And somewhere deep within the stone you've carved, a corridor takes shape. A silent path for a soul to pass through. A passage not your own, And now, as the dust of the worksite settles into silence, we turn our gaze toward a man who dared to reshape the heavens. The stone you chiseled in the last segment, the corridors and tombs, they were built for men who believed they were gods. But one man, one pharaoh, decided to change the gods. He looked at centuries of belief, at temples carved deep with tradition, and said, no, one God, one sun, one truth. This is the quiet unraveling of Akhenaten, a man born as Amenhotep IV, but who would erase the names of the gods, and in doing so nearly erased himself from memory. Tonight, we will walk beside him, through his vision, his isolation, and his long, slow fade into sand and silence. A pharaoh who chose the sun imagined being born into a divine dynasty. You are expected to continue the traditions, to honor Amun, the hidden god, to build temples, to perform rituals that have been carved in stone for centuries. But young Amenhotep IV doesn't follow the path. He worships a different force, the Aten, the disk of the sun itself, not hidden like Amun, but openly radiant, visible, singular. He renames himself Akhenaten, which means effective for the Aten. He closes temples. He moves the capital to a new city, Akhetaten, far from the priesthood, far from Thebes. He creates new art, elongated faces, soft bodies, moments of family life never before shown on walls, meant for eternity. In this new world, the old gods are forgotten. Amarna, a city of light and distance. The capital is unlike any before it. There are no towering pylons to Amun. Instead, long sunlit courtyards, flat-roofed houses, open plazas where the sun can reach every stone. Life revolves around the disk in the sky. But beneath the surface, beneath the hymns and offerings, something begins to crumble. The priests of Amun are silent, but watching. The people are confused. The old prayers no longer work. The gods of their ancestors no longer hear them. And Akhenaten, he grows thin, withdrawn. His features are stretched in statues. Some say symbolic, others say real. Was he ill, disfigured, or simply different? He no longer leads in battle. He no longer builds for the people. He writes poems to the Aten, long breathless hymns that speak of warmth but feel cold. His queen Nefertiti, once shown by his side in countless carvings, vanishes from the record. His children, 6 daughters, are seen in the art, but not much more. The dynasty, like the sun in the evening, begins to descend. The quiet erasure. When Akhenaten dies, perhaps suddenly, perhaps not, there is no grand announcement. The city of Akhetaten is abandoned, the priests return, the old gods rise. His successor, a boy named Tutankhaten, quietly changes his name to Tutankhamun. Amun is back, and Akhenaten, his name is scratched out, his statues smashed, his temples buried beneath new ones. For nearly 3,000 years he was lost. Only in modern times, when the ruins of Amarna were uncovered, did his story begin to resurface. Not as a god, not as a savior, but as a man, fragile, determined, and ultimately forgotten by the very people he tried to enlighten. Tonight, his name is spoken again, softly, calmly, like a breeze in a ruined city, a reminder that even those who change the sun's path may one day return to dust. Now, as we leave the fading echoes of a heretic king, let us follow the Nile's current towards stranger waters, where crocodiles wore crowns and gods swam with teeth bared. The Nile, it moves slowly in the moonlight, dark, steady, and deep. Its waters fed Egypt, but they also hid things, sharp things, ancient things. And in the warm shallows, something stirred, a shape with eyes just above the surface. Crocodiles, feared, revered, and once worshipped. In this segment, we gently wade into one of Egypt's strangest spiritual currents, the cults that formed around these powerful reptiles. Here, faith meant feeding monsters, and temples echoed with splashes, not silence. Sobek, the the crocodile god. Long before the pyramids stood tall, the people of Egypt watched the river for danger, a flick of a tail, a sudden strike. The Nile crocodile, swift, relentless, and impossible to predict. But instead of destroying them, the Egyptians did something else. They deified them. They called their god Sobek. Sobek had the head of a crocodile and the body of a man. He represented strength, fertility, protection, and the power of the Nile. He was not a gentle god, but he was necessary. To honor him was to keep the river safe. To ignore him was to invite disaster. In the region of Fayum, his worship was strongest. Temples were built not just for priests, but for living crocodiles. Yes, real crocodiles, kept, fed, revered, embalmed after death, buried in their own sacred tombs, feeding the sacred beasts. Imagine walking into a temple not with silence, but with ripples. You hear the splash before you see the shape. A large crocodile glides beneath the water of a stone basin. It wears jewelry, amulets hung around its neck, gold trinkets resting on its back. Priests approach, bearing offerings of raw meat, wrapped carefully in linen. They speak prayers. The beast eats. Some crocodiles were believed to be the living embodiment of Sobek himself. They were pampered, treated with reverence. Others were kept in nearby enclosures, their behavior studied for omens. But always there was respect, born not from love, but from awe. Children were taught to honor them. Villagers brought gifts. And when a sacred crocodile died, it was mummified with the same care given to a nobleman or a queen. Archaeologists have found thousands of crocodile mummies, some buried with eggs, symbols of renewal. Others wrapped with inscriptions, prayers, or sacred items. A few larger ones were even given names. The faith behind the fear. Why worship something that could kill you? Because the Nile gave life, but crocodiles could take it away. To survive in ancient Egypt was to understand balance, not good versus evil, but harmony between opposites. Sobek was terrifying, but he was part of the world, and the world must be respected. There was no judgment in these rituals, only understanding. You didn't need to love Sobek. You needed to honor him. Temples to Sobek were often placed near marshes, lakes, or canals, where the sacred animals could move freely. The priests wore scales etched into their robes. Songs were sung to call the god. In some ceremonies, a crocodile would choose the high priest, believed to be touched by divine instinct. It's a quiet truth. In a land where gods had falcon heads, jackal faces, and lion forms, a crocodile wasn't strange. It was simply part of the divine mosaic, a reminder that power lurks in still water, and faith can take forms we no longer recognize. As the ripples fade and the stone basins grow quiet, we now turn our gaze toward brighter chambers, to silk cushions, golden brushes, and a life untouched by labor. Before the sun rises above the temples and tombs, before the workers stir in their dusty mats, and before merchants unwrap yesterday's dates, in the hidden sanctuaries of the palace, the pharaoh wakes, not with alarm, not with burden, but with attention. This final segment carries you gently through the structured luxury of royal daily life, a world of incense and silence, where even the air is prepared before the ruler breathes it, awakening the divine body. The pharaoh did not simply wake up, he emerged, like the sun god Ra, reborn each day. The bed was carved from cedar or ebony, inlaid with ivory and gold leaf. Soft linens, imported, scented with lotus oil, caressed the royal skin. Servants were silent shadows, arriving before first light to adjust the room's light and aroma. One would gently clap twice to signal the shift from slumber to ceremony. Another would approach with kohl, not for beauty, but for ritual. The lines around the pharaoh's eyes protected against both glare and evil. Water was poured, not fetched, scented with myrrh, frankincense, and blue lotus petals. It was not cold. It was not rushed. The pharaoh bathed not to clean, but to cleanse, symbolically, ritually. daily. Dressing like a god. Dressing the pharaoh was a team effort, and every fold had meaning. The royal kilt, pressed and pleated. The headdress, nemes, stiffened and lined to sit perfectly. Golden cuffs, jeweled collars, sandals stitched with woven papyrus and lion hide. And then the most important piece, the signet ring, worn always, pressed into wax to seal decrees. More than jewelry, it was law in a circle of gold. Perfume was last, not too much, just a faint trace of divine fragrance. The pharaoh now looked the part, not a man, but a bridge, between gods and earth, between chaos and order, briefings and offerings. The palace was quiet, but not idle. By now, scribes had placed scrolls in the receiving hall, reports of harvests, temple activity, court rumors, and trade. The pharaoh read slowly. There was no rush. What needed deciding would be decided. Breakfast followed, simple but symbolic. Honey-dipped bread, dates and wine, sometimes duck, sometimes fish, depending on the day's rituals. Then came the temple procession. Carried, not walked, the pharaoh moved through sunlit columns toward the inner sanctum of a chosen god, often Amun-Ra or Horus. He did not pray as commoners did. He offered milk, incense, silence. Priests bowed. Drums beat faintly. It was not loud. It was measured. The pharaoh bowed last, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. He was both servant and symbol. A man made myth. Morning ends, the day begins, and then the world began. Advisors stepped forward. Petitions were heard. Travelers from distant kingdoms awaited audiences. The rhythm of empire resumed. But that first hour, that sacred calm, it was everything. Because in ancient Egypt, the day was not marked by noise or labor. It began with balance, with Mayat, the principle of harmony. And the pharaoh, freshly bathed, perfumed and robed, stood at the center of it all. Not because he ruled, but because he reflected what the world hoped to be. Still, beautiful, and ordered. And now, with incense fading into memory, the gold of morning replaced by the hush of night, we step gently back from that world. Imagine yourself seated cross-legged on a woven mat. The air is still, dry, but cool inside the mud-brick room. You hear the soft rasp of a reed pen called a kalamos, gliding slowly across a papyrus scroll. The scent of ink, made from soot and water, drifts faintly in the air. You are a scribe in ancient Egypt, not a laborer, not a priest, but something in between, a silent thread that weaves the whole civilization together. In a world where few could read or write, you belong to a small, powerful group of literate elites. You are the memory of the pharaoh, the voice of the temple, and the keeper of law, taxes and trade. The role of the scribe. Unlike the workers building tombs under the harsh sun, you spend your days indoors, recording harvests, copying religious hymns, composing letters, and transcribing tax receipts. Every grain counted, every land measurement noted, every shipment catalogued, passes through your hands. Your work isn't flashy. You don't wear gold. But when an overseer needs proof of debt, or a priest needs the right spell for burial, or the pharaoh needs to send word to a distant province, it's you they come to. You know the scripts, hieratic for speed, hieroglyphs for sacred writing. You've studied for years under strict tutors who corrected every stroke. It was grueling, but now you hold knowledge that even soldiers and merchants must respect. The training of a scribe. The path to this quiet power begins early. From the age of 5 or 6, young boys, often from elite or priestly families, were sent to the House of Life, a school attached to temples or government buildings. There, teachers drilled them in writing with reed pens, memorizing lists and reciting passages aloud in sing-song tones. Mistakes were not tolerated. There were no playgrounds, no toys, just repetition, posture, and precision. But if you endured, If you learned the signs and mastered the flow of language, you earned more than just literacy. You earned the ability to shape decisions, policies, rituals, and memory. A day in the life. Your day begins with a silent walk through the temple court. The sun hasn't yet touched the top of the pylons. You bow before the scribal god Thoth, a figure with the head of an ibis, patron of writing, wisdom, and the moon. You sit at your low desk and unroll a scroll, perhaps detailing grain taxes from the past season. You count, you calculate, you annotate. Nearby, another scribe chants a funerary spell for a noble's tomb. In another chamber, a group is cataloguing the temple library. Hundreds of scrolls filled with star charts, chants, and royal decrees. There is peace in repetition, in knowing that each line you draw will carry meaning across years, perhaps even centuries. Outside, life is loud. Merchants haggle, workers shout, oxen grunt. But inside this dim room, filled with chalk dust and the smell of oil lamps, though time slows, the ink dries, another truth is preserved, gentle reflection. As night falls, the scribes return to their homes, simple, modest places, but comfortable. You may not wear the broad collars of priests or wield the power of generals, but your influence is quiet and deep. Even the gods are recorded through your hand. Imagine that. In a world of pyramids, of sun gods and sacred animals, you, calm, focused, and nearly invisible, are the bridge between thought and eternity. So close your eyes, if they're not already drifting. Let the soft scratch of a pen on papyrus echo in your mind, the rhythm of recording, the breath of language, and the steady hush of remembered silence. What was school like in ancient Egypt? The soft scrape of a reed against limestone, the rustle of linen tunics, the quiet drone of children chanting from memory beneath a painted colonnade. This is not a place of play. This is Per Ankh, the house of life, where ancient Egyptian children, especially boys of noble or priestly families, came to learn the arts of writing, math, and religion. You are one of them now, a young student, perhaps no older than 8, seated cross-legged on a dusty mat. Your slate lies across your knees. In your hand, a stylus made from broken pottery. No toys, no chalkboards, only memory and repetition. The structure of learning. The lessons begin early, before the heat swells, before the city stirs. A teacher, stern, bearded, always watching, paces slowly between rows of students. He reads aloud a proverb from the instructions of Tahotep, a collection of ancient wisdom. The tongue of the wise is a shield. You repeat it again and again, until it's etched into your mind like chisel marks on stone. There is no formal curriculum, no breaks, no snacks, only reading, writing, arithmetic, and obedience. Learning to become a scribe, a temple reader, or even a priest takes years. For most, it is a long, dusty climb through scrolls, signs, and silence. Tools of the student. Your writing materials are simple, humble even. You copy texts onto ostraca, shards of pottery used like scratch paper. Later, if you earn it, you'll graduate to papyrus. Ink is made from soot or ochre mixed with water and gum, kept in a simple wooden pallet. Your writing tool? A split reed sharpened with a stone. Mistakes are met not with erasers, but with discipline. Some schools were strict, even severe. Corporal punishment wasn't uncommon. But the goal was not cruelty. It was control, precision, endurance. Because once you're trained, your words carry weight. They can calculate taxes, record deaths, speak to gods. The subjects. You don't learn history in the modern sense. There's no timeline of pharaohs to memorize. Instead, you study moral instruction, hymns, mathematical problems, and ritual texts. You might chant stories of how Ra sailed across the sky, or calculate how many sacks of grain could fill a granary. You'll practice your glyphs until they become second nature. art and language at once. Occasionally, if you're lucky, your master may read aloud from the tales of legendary scribes or the adventures of gods. These moments, quiet, slow, mysterious, bring a rare softness to your day. Social role of education. Education isn't for everyone. Most Egyptians, farmers, builders, potters, weavers never see the inside of a school. They pass knowledge orally, generation to generation, in the rhythm of labor and tradition. But you are part of a sacred transmission, a living link in the chain that holds the kingdom together, not with sword or coin, but with language. And so, as the midday sun leans westward and shadows stretch across your little classroom, you rest your hand. You place the shard aside. Another proverb is yours now, carved into thought. Do not be proud because you are learned. Consult the ignorant as well as the wise. The day winds down. You are tired but not weary. Tomorrow, more chants, more glyphs, more silence. But for now, the wind sighs softly outside the mud brick walls. The gods smile faintly behind painted eyes, and learning sleeps with you. The slow, silent world of ancient Egyptian medicine. The sharp scent of herbs, the soft crackle of parchment, the murmur of prayers carried across warm air, heavy with incense. Welcome to the still, strange world of ancient Egyptian medicine, where healing was half science, half ritual, and mostly waiting. The physician's morning. Imagine you are a sunbu, a physician in service to a noble household or temple. Before you see a single patient, you consult your most precious tool, the Eber's papyrus, a long, delicate scroll inscribed centuries ago with medical knowledge, passed from healer to healer like a sacred spellbook. Its pages contain hundreds of treatments, poultices for burns, prayers for migraines, salves for eye infections. Some remedies are surprisingly effective, like honey, used as an antiseptic. Others, less so. Crocodile dung, crushed beetles, and spells invoking gods. But none are rushed. Nothing in this world is fast. Healing, like building pyramids or writing glyphs, takes time. Long, careful time. Tools and treatments. The toolkit is simple. A bronze knife, linen wrappings, jars of oil and honey, bundles of dried herbs like frankincense, myrrh, and juniper. You might mix crushed willow bark into wine, unknowingly tapping into the same salicylic acid found in aspirin. There are diagnostic rituals too. You observe the patient's posture, breathing, pulse. You ask, softly, when the illness began, how it moved, where it settled, what dreams accompanied it. Because in this world, disease is not just physical. It may be spiritual, emotional, even divine. So sometimes healing is done with words, whispered chants, invocations to Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of healing and destruction. Sometimes it's the priest, not the doctor, who holds the cure, the patient's experience. Now imagine the patient. You lie on a low-woven bed, the sun slanting gently through a reed window. Your healer prepares a thick poultice, garlic and ochre mixed with palm wine, then applies it with care. It stings slightly. There are no pills, no injections, no machines, just quiet, time, repetition. The healer may hum a hymn as they work. You drift between sleep and waking, wrapped in linen, as flies buzz lazily and a breeze brushes your skin. Days pass. Slowly, perhaps, the fever breaks. Or perhaps it doesn't. There are limits, after all, even to their knowledge. But you're not alone. You are cared for. And sometimes, that's what matters most. The ritual of healing medicine and magic were never far apart. For Egyptians, healing wasn't just about the body, it was about balance or mahat. To heal meant to restore harmony between the person and the world, between the body and the gods, the breath and the stars, the stomach and the Nile. And so, treatments were slow, repetitive, layered in meaning and mystery. The healer's work was not to fix, but to listen. to restore, to wait. A kind of ancient patience that perhaps we've forgotten. The day fades. Another papyrus is rolled back into its leather case. The tools are cleaned. Incense trails into the twilight. And somewhere beneath the watchful eye of Thoth, the god of wisdom, another patient closes their eyes. Healing continues in silence. The Nile glides slowly, wide, still and reflective like polished obsidian. Its current moves as if time itself were liquid. And floating quietly upon it, sails half lowered, ropes creaking softly, are the funerary boats of ancient Egypt. This is not a journey of the living, it is a voyage of departure. And like everything in ancient Egyptian life, it follows a rhythm, a pattern, a ritual as old as memory itself. The final journey begins. When someone died in ancient Egypt, especially someone of status, their passage to the afterlife wasn't just spiritual, it was physical, real, palpable. The body was prepared, wrapped carefully in linen, accompanied by amulets, prayers, and small offerings. Then came the procession, a slow, quiet walk to the river's edge, where a boat awaited. Not just any boat, a solar bark, modeled after the vessel of the sun, god Ra himself. Painted and carved, with a high-curved prow and oars resting silently in the morning mist. Family members followed. Priests whispered incantations. Mourners, some paid, some genuine, let out soft, ritualized wails. And then the boat pushed off, a river between worlds. In Egyptian belief, the Nile was more than water. It was a symbol of the cycle between life and death, flood and drought, morning and dusk. Sailing westward toward the setting sun meant entering the realm of the dead. Tombs were often located on the west bank of the Nile, where the sun disappears beyond the horizon. The journey might take hours, even days. The boat rocked gently as oars dipped in rhythm. Wind in the sails, the hush of water, no rush, just motion. And if you close your eyes, you can imagine yourself on that boat. The low murmur of voices, the creak of wood, the quiet lap of eternity against the hull. Sacred cargo and river offerings. Along with the body came grave goods, bread, beer, clothing, wooden figurines to serve in the afterlife, even miniature boats to continue the journey beyond this one. Sometimes offerings were tossed into the river, fruits, flowers, perfumed oils, watching as they floated for a moment and then sank as if accepted by the water's hidden depths. For wealthier Egyptians, the journey was accompanied by chants from the Book of the Dead, inscribed passages guiding the soul past demons, gates, and guardians of the afterlife. All of it unfolding slowly, deliberately, as though even time paused in reverence. Dusk on the west bank. When the boat reached the west shore, the procession resumed, slower now, quieter. The tombs stood waiting, carved into rock or buried beneath a humble mound. The final rites were performed, bread broken, incense burned, prayers whispered with voices almost too soft to hear. And then, silence, a stillness as the world held its breath. A life, now memory. A journey, now myth. The boat returned alone, rocking gently in the growing twilight. Another cycle completed, and the Nile flowed on, slow, eternal, unchanged. In the gentle hush of early dawn, before the city awakens and the workers gather their tools, one figure is already awake, the scribe. He does not lift stones, he does not chisel walls, he does not herd oxen or till the flooded fields. Instead, he dips his reed pen into ink made from soot and gum, and writes. The quiet power of ink. In ancient Egypt, where gods walked beside men in myths and order, Mahat was everything, the scribe held a quiet, invisible power. He recorded the tax lists, the food stores, the names of the workers, the weight of grain, the rituals of the temples, the laws of the land, the poetry of the gods. Without the scribe, the world could fall into silence, into chaos. And so he sat, often cross-legged, papyrus stretched across his knees, carefully pressing meaning into scrolls. Stroke by stroke, mark by mark, a life of detail, not drama. But do not imagine his life was one of comfort or prestige. While scribes were respected, their days were long and their work unending. Each symbol had to be precise, each name exact. A mistake could change meaning, anger a god, or cost a farmer his land. So the scribe sat for hours under the shifting sun, his back hunched, his eyes squinting, a low table by his side, the smell of ink in his nostrils, the scratch of reed on dried papyrus, a constant whisper. There were no weekends, no holidays during tax season, only lists, only prayers, only ledgers. And still, he wrote, writing the words of the gods. To write in Egypt was to touch the divine. The ancient Egyptians believed that Thoth, the ibis-headed god, had given them writing. Every word was a gift, every scroll a sacred act. Scribes who worked in temples didn't just copy old stories. They preserved the secrets of the universe, astronomical charts, medical instructions, funerary spells, even dreams. Imagine writing under torchlight, surrounded by stone walls covered in hieroglyphs, each flicker of the flame casting shadows across symbols that told of life, death, and rebirth. This was not storytelling. This was eternity, captured. A life lived in ink. The scribe would grow old, surrounded by scrolls, his fingers stained black, his hearing dulled by silence, his world measured in columns and rows, not footsteps. He would teach young boys to hold the pen, to copy the signs, to breathe life into the language of the pharaohs. And in time, he would die quietly. But his work, his words, might live forever in a tomb, temple, or buried deep in the sands of forgotten cities. Even now, thousands of years later, we read what they wrote. The names, the numbers, the verses, the dreams. The scribes never slept. And so, we remember. And now, as our journey along the ancient Nile draws to a close, you may feel a quiet weight settling over you. Not heavy, not burdensome, but deep, like the slow accumulation of time itself. You have walked through stone corridors where tomb builders carved under torchlight. You stood behind a pharaoh who defied tradition and vanished into memory. You watched sacred crocodiles float through temple pools, and you followed the scribe who never slept as he etched meaning into silence. These were not the warriors, not the gods, but the forgotten hands and tired eyes of a civilization built on ritual, routine, and the relentless passage of time. Out there, the world was harsh. Sand whipped against skin. The sun cracked lips and backs. And life was not always fair, nor kind, nor long. But within the temples, in the scrolls, in the rhythms of daily life, there was structure, there was order, there was something eternal. Even now, when you close your eyes, you might still hear it. The murmur of the Nile, the soft brush of linen, the faint echo of chisels tapping stone. And as you rest, your breath may begin to fall into rhythm with theirs. Slow, measured, ancient. You are not building tombs. You are not leading empires. You are simply floating, like a reed boat down the river, drifting across time and into dreams. Sleep well, and may the echoes of ancient Egypt keep you company through the night.